Welcome to week 6 of the Oracle Social Distancing Podcast, or Oracle Sports Social Distancing Podcast. I can never get it right. Whatever it says down there, that's the name of this podcast. I'm Oracle Sports Editor Brian Hattab, and that is Nolan Brown.
Hello. You got it right in the first try, and I'm very proud of you, Brian.
Yes, last week I got my names, our names, the collective names mixed up on the first attempt, and maybe I was just being presumptive with what I said. We'll talk about that later in the show with what I said. Yeah, stroke the beard. What did I mean by that? No, that was just what happened last week. Is I said my name was Nolan Brown, but I gave Nolan the position of sports editor. So, like I said, maybe one day, Nolan. Maybe one day. I don't know.
Yeah, I never know.
I don't know.
Never know.
That's why people should stick through till the end of the podcast. But this week, we don't have any time for a real monologue here because we got two great guests. Later in the program, we'll be joined by the Assistant Director of Sports for Bulls Media, or Bulls Radio, or Bulls Internet Stream. I think whatever they want to call themselves these days. Kidding. But seriously, they did change their name midway through the year, so I think the ribbing is well earned. Regardless, our guest will be Kevin Erlendsson. His name, to my knowledge, has not changed. He'll join us later in the program. We'll talk about our favorite moments from this past year in USF Athletics. He and I are both graduating. We are basically, this is our last hurrah. So we'll have a little bit of fun and talk about, pretty much the last year. Maybe we'll delve into the year before. I don't know. Whatever we wind up doing, I'm sure it'll be a good time. And before that, we have an interview that kind of brings everything full circle for me. I'll just say it. Our interview is former USF women's basketball standout Kitija Laksa. And when I first started covering USF Athletics, obviously going into things, my knowledge of USF Athletics probably was, you could sum it up as Quentin Flowers, Marlon Mack, and the men's basketball team was not good. But why they weren't good was just they weren't winning games, and that's all I really knew. Actually, I might not have even known that at that point. So, my first thing I ever did was covering a game with Bulls Radio, which is what it was called at the time, which is where the good-natured ribbing comes in the name change. But I was like, all right, I need to do some research beforehand. And this was Kit's sophomore year, about 2 to 3 games in. And anything I could, any research I was trying to do on the team would just come right back to Kitija Laksa. So I was studying up on her. Anyway, the broadcast begins, and this is where you should do your prep before you go on the air. Talk about what you're going to talk about, because I had all this prep on Kitija Laksa. And then the play-by-play guy throws to me and wants me to talk about the lack of Courtney Williams this year. And I had no idea who the hell Courtney Williams was at the time. I know who she is now, of course. That's what happens 4 years later. You learn history and all that. But I do think...
I have to ask, what was your response to that?
My response was... Oh God, I can pull up the audio at some point. It's somewhere in my USF Gmail. It's an audio file I've not looked at in 4 years, and for good reason. So without further ado, like we said, we have 2 guests for you this week. So let's just get right into it. Here is our interview with Kitija Laksa on the Oracle Sports Social Distancing Podcast. All right, our first guest this week is very notorious USF alumna. She started her career out as the unanimous AAC Freshman of the Year, ultimately finished that career 6th all-time in scoring, 1st on the free throw percentage list, 2nd on three-point field goal percentage list, and in her 3 complete seasons as a Bull, USF went to the NCAA tournament all 3 seasons, talking, of course, about Kitija Laksa. She was drafted number 11 overall in last week's WNBA draft. Kit, thanks for joining us. It's 9 a.m. here, so what time is it over there in Latvia?
Thanks for having me. It's 4 p.m. The day's already going here.
Your day is already over. Ours is just just beginning, unless stupid us takes a nap afterward because it's so early these days. But actually, that brings up a good point. The world is kind of in a different place than when we last saw you over here. So obviously, the last time we saw you in Tampa, you went down with that injury, and you spent the last year plus rehabbing. You just started playing again in December, and then the world kind of shut down a couple months later. How hard has that been? I mean, you just getting right where you needed to be.
Yeah, it's been crazy. All the ride has been crazy. Just being forced not to play just because of the injury, finally being able to play and feeling good and kind of finding my own rhythm, and then everything's just shut down in the world. So it's been hard, but I mean, everyone's dealing with it. Every single athlete, every single person in the world. So I mean, just trying to keep myself in shape, working out, doing as much as I can do right now at home, staying safe, staying at home, and just trying to entertain myself, to be honest.
How has Latvia responded to the pandemic? Because I know Europe is a couple of weeks ahead of us, um, or we were just kind of a couple of weeks behind paying attention. But regardless, we've had mixed results over here. What's been the situation like over there in Latvia?
Actually, it's been really good in Latvia, as well as it can go. Our government shut everything down pretty early in the beginning of March, when like things started to kind of come in here in Latvia. So it's been quite almost 2 months, and we're in a quarantine until May 12th, and after that, well, we'll see what the government says. Maybe some things are gonna open up slowly, hopefully. But other than that, we're staying safe. People are advised to stay at home, and there are not much of activities going on in the whole country.
You mentioned that you want to keep in shape and whatnot, and obviously you have some time outside of that. And so what have you been doing at home? I mean, you're pretty much homebound for a while. So what kind of things have you been doing to keep yourself busy?
I mean, the worst part of all of this is that it's still kind of cold and chilly outside, so not much to do outside. I do have a hoop, put some couple shots up, go for a little run. But other than that, I have my garage with my little weight room set up, so that's been very, very helpful just to like actually stay healthy, stay in shape, stay fit, and that's the most things that I'm doing, trying to make my own routine, kind of balance what I should do every day, just keeping in touch with my trainer, and so that I don't overdo or not do enough at the same time. So that's my entertainment in the quarantine.
Just mentioning how cold and chilly. It's really cold and chilly over here. It's 64 degrees right now. It's just, I
I
walked
don't
outside this morning.
I want to hear this. Next question, please.
I walked outside this morning and I'm like, this is too much. No, so between the time you left USF and the time the world ended, basically, what was your rehab process like? Like, what did you have to do to get back into playing shape?
Honestly, just trust my trainer. I've been working with him over 2 years before I got hurt. He was our national team athletic trainer and strength coach as well. So we've known each other for quite a bit. So when I decided to stay at home, I knew I want to work with him. He was a part of the professional team I played for this past year too. So it was a really good balance for him to see me every day and work on my knee, work on my strengths and weaknesses. So kind of having that really good relationship with him, that was the main part, how and why I got back to the basketball court. And other than that, I've been just working my butt off just to be able to play ball again.
Was that kind of a deciding factor of why you went to Latvia for a year, was to be with him?
Well, it did play a big role. I mean, all the decision was based on my knee, how and where I would feel most comfortable, knowing that I would not start a season from the beginning. So yes, the professionals I worked with the past season was it was a big factor. It did mean a lot for me to not only have that, but also have the support at home, just see my family pretty much as I can and want, because that kind of was not an option for me before when I was in college.
As we mentioned earlier, you were drafted last week. When did you know that you were going to be entering the draft? I mean, I'm sure you probably heard some rumblings about it during your time with USF, and then that knee injury happened, and then you had a chance to play overseas. But when did you learn that you would be drafted?
I mean, it was kind of crazy from just last year, just needing to pull my name out of the draft because it was already in. So once I decided that, it was just a full go for me to like work on my game, work on my everything, just to like be able to be a part of the 2020 draft. So I was never really worried about whether I'm gonna get drafted. It was a matter of time, a matter of who's gonna pick me. I was very confident, very sure about it. I know my game. I proved myself when I was in States. I think I played well, but at the same time was never. Oh, I was never not confident, but content with how things were going. So always trying to improve, always working on everything I can. So when the time came for just the draft happening, I trusted my agents to do their job, and for me, it was not much of doing regards to that or as talking or whatever it was. It was just for me to stay healthy, get healthy, and play basketball. So I got the easy part. I got the easy job.
When did you first know it was going to be Seattle selecting you?
There were a couple of teams that were just reaching out to me that I had my share of work interviews for the first time, I would say. So that was a fun process, just a new experience, doing everything virtually and getting to know teams and whatnot. Seattle had the most interest in me, which was obviously a great feeling, just getting a call from Coach Hughes and like hearing him talking about my game and how I would fit in. And it just gave me a good vibe. It was a very nice conversation. So just the confidence in them that they want me was a good feeling, something for me that I trusted, and I kind of knew that Seattle could and would pick me.
Well, Seattle turned out to be a pretty good destination for you. You're going to get to play with Sue Bird. I know there's that picture of you two from a couple of years ago. And then once you were selected, she made a statement on TV. And so I know I asked you this after right after the draft during the conference call, but just again, has it kind of settled in that you're going to be playing with Sue Bird?
I mean, it's a wonderful feeling. Just, I would say not only Sue, but all the team. Like, there are a lot of stars, a lot of Team USA players. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm happy that I am a part of the Seattle organization right now, and I actually cannot wait to get on the court all together with them. Like, prove myself. First of all, prove myself, show off my own skill, and just to learn from all the bunch there that's gonna be there. And it's a great roster they have. And I mean, Sue, of course, she's on the top. So I'm excited just to learn and have that opportunity.
That draft experience was hopefully one of a kind. Obviously, you think of the draft, you think of going to a central location, you think of meeting the commissioner, you think of meeting your new bosses right away. But obviously, you're over in Latvia. Everyone else is wherever they are in the world. We talked to Evelyn Vian of women's soccer yesterday, and she was probably one the last draftees in terms of before everything shut down. But what was your experience like? Obviously, we know, I think we talked to you on that conference call. Nolan just mentioned it, like 5 a.m. What time did you get to bed? Just how unique of an experience was that?
Honestly, it was a crazy experience, and none of us would have like thought or even imagined that it'll be a virtual draft until it actually happened. And we were forced to have a virtual draft. So it was interesting. Of course, I wish we were actually having whatever it was, orange carpet draft and all that fun stuff that comes with it. But at the end of the day, I spent the night, the early morning with my family. So The draft started at 2 a.m. We all gathered on the couch, just put the TV on, have a little glass of champagne, and just chatted and like enjoyed our time together. Because I mean, it is a big deal. The draft is a big deal. We understand it, but for me, the bigger part was just actually being all together with my family. That I don't know if it would have happened if I was invited to the actual draft, and if I could have all of them together with me. So yeah, I mean, draft started at 2 a.m. I think my name was called around 3 or something like that, and well, it was a crazy experience all in all. And then just staying up, trying to stay up for all the media stuff or the calls from the team, and it was very interesting. Oh, and the question was,
So what
what
time
time?
did you end up getting to bed that night or that morning?
Like before 6.
Well, that's not bad.
Slept until like 11 noon ish. Then I had my share of interviews in Latvia, so everything just started at that point. But everything's now at least set a little bit. A couple of interviews here and there, but nothing crazy like it was the draft night.
Yeah, you stay up, you got to listen to us, ask you questions, and then you go to bed, you wake up, and you do it all over again.
In a different language. I wish I could
Yeah.
just talk to everyone in the same language. Everyone understood it. Everything was clear. You know, that would be probably better. But hey, I'm enjoying
It'd be
it.
so much easier.
It's not like I'm that busy.
It'd be so much easier that way. And I'm sure that you got a lot of text messages and phone calls and whatnot from your friends and family. Did you get any sort of reactions from your current team, from TTT Riga? Did they reach out and say anything to you?
Yeah, they congratulated me, the coach, a couple staff members, teammates. It was fun. Like they knew that I will enter the draft, so it was nice to have them around, kind of with me going through this year, this season, and seeing how everything is turning out right now.
So we're going back to the Storm for a minute here. You're not set to join them until 2021. I believe you mentioned on the conference call it was their decision, but it seemed, it was, you guys came to a mutual agreement. It was for the best. What's the timeline looking like in terms of what you're going to be doing in this upcoming year?
Yes, it was a mutual agreement and a decision, knowing how crazy things are going on right now in the world. So we don't even know when things are gonna start or regards to the season or traveling. So yeah, it was a mutual decision for me right now. That is kind of the hardest part, not knowing what's gonna happen. But the goal up until next year's season, WNBA season, is for me to play somewhere in Europe, in EuroLeague, Eurocup, some of the top leagues over here, in a top team or wherever it is. Right now, that's uncertain either. Just again, that's my agent's work to find opportunities for me to play somewhere, and I'm sure that will happen. It's very very early. It's not even May, and like some teams, if everything was going well and like wouldn't be no pandemic, some teams would still be playing. So it's early days for me to tell where I'll end up for the next European season.
To go back to your time at USF, I mean, your junior season was pretty incredible. You were the only player in Division I to record 2 40-point performances. You had that 40-point performance against Southern in December where you hit 11 straight three-pointers. And then, of course, you topped that off with that 41-point performance against number 13 Ohio State. I don't think I've heard the Sun Dome louder in my time at USF than that afternoon, that Sunday afternoon. What was your greatest memory at USF that season or just in general?
I cannot name just one. All in all, it was a great experience. Like every year brought something that a memory that I will not forget. Like freshman year, just playing with Courtney and having that opportunity to play with those upperclassmen that were really, really good and just to learn from them, and going to the NCAA tournament at UCLA was a great experience. Sophomore year, just kind of picking up some of the leadership, just already being thrown in it and already having a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. And junior year you just talked about junior year. There are a lot of numbers, a lot of just stuff like that, statistics that I don't really remember, but it was just an amazing opportunity just to, again, pick up even more leadership and just learning those things and doing things that I was not used to before, maybe. So senior year there was a lot of hype, a lot of excitement. It could have been a crazy good year, but I mean, things happen and things happen for a reason. Maybe I haven't figured out what the reason is, but I'm happy where I'm at right now. I'm happy that I'm drafted, and I would say my journey just is beginning right now. So the best things are yet to come, and right now I'm just staying on the ground with my both feet and going day by day, hoping that we can bring sports back and just prepare for whatever basketball season it can be. And so I'm just excited. I'm excited for the opportunities I've already had, for the ones that I've been giving right now, and for the ones coming.
I want to ask specifically about European players in particular. I know Will Turner from Bulls 247 asked this on the conference call last week. I'm sure it's a blur, so I'll kind of reform it again. But Satu Sabali, she went 2nd overall, and then you went 11th overall. 2 European players and a whole pool of American players. And then you look at what Coach Fernandez is doing with the current USF team, where he's bringing in a lot of international talent that already has experience. And what do you think about the current state of European players from overseas, maybe just not even American players in general? And how do you think the basketball world is looking at them, and where could they be in the future?
I think it doesn't matter where you go, everyone can play basketball. Like, there's, of course, different types of basketball. Every country, every team has some of their own kind of thing going on. So I feel that's the best part, that what we had at USF, we kind of could put all those things together, especially my junior year with Laia, with Maria, with Lara. Like, we had a really, really good thing going on, and it was disappointing not to go further in the NCAA tournament, because we're really good. Everyone saw it, everyone knew it. So I mean, I haven't really followed this year's team. I mean, just a little bit. So I'm excited. I hope they can get their stuff together and beat us, the team that was before them, because we kind of put the bar pretty high, and I think we really helped the program just to show ourselves on the big stage, for people to start recognizing us and respecting us. So I hope that can keep going, especially at USF. But in general, I think there are good European players, and hopefully this year's draft, and especially maybe my case, where I was playing in Latvia, then I came to play in NCAA. I came back to Latvia for this 1 year. Like, my path to the draft was kind of crazy. So I hope that kind of shows the little girls to just, you should just dream. You can dream, you do it, and you can reach those goals. So that's the big pride that I will carry, and I hope it just shows someone else that, well, I can do this. If she can do it, I can do it. So kind of make the league more diverse, because at the end of the day, most of the WNBA players come here to Europe to play during the other season, which is way longer. So just food for thought. There's a lot of good basketball going on around the world.
That's a great way to leave it. I mean, you walk into the practice facility for Coach Fernandez's team, you see all the flags there. I think Coach was trying to challenge Chris Torello of Bay News 9 a couple of months ago, for him to name all the flags, and he got close. He got most of them, and I give him credit for that. He's smarter than he lets on sometimes.
He got the American flag right. That's always a start.
It's like taking the SAT. They gave you 600 points for your name, and if you don't get that, you're in trouble. Kit, thank you so much for taking a few minutes. I know you've been busy the last week or so, and it's hard to figure out why, right? So I really appreciate this. You were the first athlete in any sport other than football I did like any research on in my time at USF, and now you're my last interview. So I just wanted to say thank you, making things full circle here, and I wish you best of luck in Seattle.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Well,
Thank you.
just hit me up. Hit me up when we get to Seattle. We got some basketball going on because
Absolutely.
this is crazy. We need sports back.
Oh, you're telling me. I mean, we've seen
You said it.
ESPN's about to, I think, sign South Korean baseball just so they have live sports to air. Yeah. So that's.
Good luck. I mean, no ESPN here in Latvia, so we're good.
Basically no ESPN here outside of the Michael Jordan documentary right now.
True.
All right, Kit. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Kit.
While we wait for our friend Kevin to join us, I have a special treat for Nolan. Hope this comes as a surprise for him. It was a moment last fall. Found a very funny video on YouTube, a very long video on YouTube that I don't think Nolan really particularly appreciated at the time, but I would hope now the memories coming back to him when I play this for him bring back good memories of, you know, when the world wasn't ending.
I'm scared.
You should be scared.
Oh, God.
So the fun story about this, and I have no idea if the sound is being recorded on our end here. I played it, and I played it in the office, and I played the entirety of this video, and as you can see, it's a long video. Nolan went off to class maybe 45 minutes into the video or something like this, 45 minutes to an hour. So again, this was playing in the office over and over and over again. So anyway, just to catch your breath here, Nolan comes back from class. Guess what? The video is still playing.
Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was.
See, I was just more surprised that it was still going.
Wait, you were surprised?
Yeah.
I can give you a real surprise.
Oh, okay.
There's
Go
another
ahead.
video I can bring up here.
Go ahead.
I think we're good.
Are you sure? I want to take a bite out of my cereal.
Yeah, I ate my lunch to this song that day. And then eventually my dinner, because it went on that long. By the way, this all went on a production day when we make our print edition. So valuable time that could have gone into writing and editing and laying out the sports section went into making sure nobody shut this off of my computer.
To be fair, I applaud it for its artistic value.
Well, here's the thing. It eventually loops at like the hour mark. So she doesn't actually sing this for 2:15. So you know what that makes her? A big, fat phony.
You're going to see the pain in her eyes. Looks ready to just...
I saw the pain in your eyes. Oh my God. I feel so bad for her, but like, listen, she's dedicated to her profession, and I give her a lot of props for that.
Art is pain.
Art is pain. Ball don't lie. Ball don't lie. Her name is Elise Uckland, if you're curious of following her. Her YouTube channel is great. So she really is a funny cat. She also wrote the world's shortest song, but that's you can look that up on your own time. Hey, welcome to the second half of our podcast here. We're joined now by the Assistant Director of Sports at Bulls Radio, Bulls Media, whatever you guys decided to call yourselves at the end of the year. Kevin Erlendsson joins us.
I'm not even 100% sure I'm still on the payroll, to be honest with you.
Are you submitting timesheets and are you getting paychecks?
I haven't checked my bank account. I probably should do that.
It is very troubling. That's very troubling to know. I'm certain I'm still on payroll here, and I don't know why. But yeah, it's been a minute since we've actually had a whole lot to do. As you can see, I've escaped to a tropical island between the Kitija Laksa interview and our chat here with Kevin. You know, I'm one of the dumb Floridians on the beach right now. But Kevin, I hope everything's well for you. You look like you've got a good collection going on behind you.
Oh yeah. We don't have to get into that, but I do have a Clint Dempsey head who sleeps above me at night, watches over me.
Creepy. Creepy.
Nice. Yes, thank you.
That's actually poetic. Wow. I wish I had Clint Dempsey watching over me at night.
We're birthday twins, so.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Now you should find out if. Never mind. We'll just edit whatever I was going to say out. So what we're going to do here is a bit of kind of you can kind of already guess, it's going to be a lighthearted, loose round table this is effectively the end of the academic year. I mean, the USF Athletics year kind of unceremoniously ended about a month or so ago. And kind of had hoped it would be going on until June, but that's not the case. It ended with a women's tennis loss to James Madison on, what was it, March 12th, March 13th. So here we are. It's the end of the line for Kevin and I. We're graduating. So really, I wanted to get you on because you pretty much worked and covered as much as Nolan and I did, and traveled pretty much as Nolan and I did. So we kind of saw a lot of the same things. So I kind of wanted to get your perspective on really kind of the big moments this year in USF Athletics. And for some teams, it might be easier than others to pick out those memorable moments. But I want to start really with football, because it's obviously the one we all think of when it comes to college athletics. Football does drive everything. And for me, I think it's that BYU game, just because that's a win they needed. It was homecoming. It was hard earned. I mean, 60-plus yard punt is what sealed the deal. And then you had that dramatic ending on defense. I think it was KJ Sales batted down a pass that would have won the game for BYU. Nolan, you and I were mere feet away from that final play. So to me, there's not a lot of highlights to take away from that football season. But if there's one memorable moment, I think it's that BYU win.
Well, in talking about that game, the two players you just mentioned, Trent Schneider with the punt and then KJ Sales with the bat down, those are really the two best players for USF last year. You could probably make a case for a couple of other players, but not a whole lot to be happy about. If I was going to pick a big moment, I'd probably say after the season ended, when the nightmare ended and Charlie Strong was fired. Maybe you can even say Jeff Scott being hired, but I think to pick an on-the-field moment for this football season is a bit trying to force something poetic that's not there, because there really wasn't anything to like about this football season.
Nolan?
Oh, my bad. I didn't know.
I thought I was worried your video froze and we were going to have to redo everything.
No, I realized you said round table moment. I'm going to piggyback off of what Kevin said. There really wasn't any sort of shining moment throughout the season. I mean, maybe Trent Schneider consistently. I mean, yeah, he had a few bad punts and whatnot, but I mean, he was a consistent, I guess, rock for that team, and to see him play well was really exciting. And whenever he did, it was always a good time, even if they lost. I mean, if Trent Schneider kicked well, it's you got to be happy for that moment at least. But yeah, I'm stealing Kevin's answer. I guess when the nightmare ended, as he said.
I actually want to amend my answer. Halftime of ECU when we all realized there was mellow mushroom in the media
You realize that at
dining room.
halftime?
Well, I had a lot going on in my mind, you know.
So you just didn't eat before the game.
No.
Actually, not to go down the whole media food thing, because it can be tacky if you continue to brag about all the catering we get. But they actually left out that food after the game. They just let it out. Like if you were hungry after the game, it was still there, which can't say the same about really any other stadium that I've been to. Houston football stadium, I still am complaining about to this day, because they brought out a pretty good spread. We ate, and then by kickoff, everything was gone. There was no food for the rest of the day. So
I mean, Georgia Tech had that bag of popcorn that was just chilling out there for the entire game.
And not to keep harping on food, but we probably didn't. I don't think we actually got a chance to sample the food there, because we just ate like pigs for breakfast that morning at the Atlanta Breakfast Club, which is still to this day, honestly, the best named restaurant I've ever been to. The Atlanta Breakfast Club is a phenomenal name, and it was kind of pricey, but man, I would do it again in a minute. But that was a fun moment that the three of us, along with Will Polston, had. That was a pretty good moment. And but to keep the theme going with actual sports, what a shift here, and keep it with what happened in the fall before we shift to winter and spring. Move on to soccer here. I think for me, my number one moment was, and it's really difficult to say, because seeing them make the NCAA tournament was a really big moment, but I don't think that happens without this quality win at home early on in the season against Louisville, who was ranked number 5 in the nation. It was a very physical game, and it would have been very easy to get caught up in that and take the bait. But I remember Bob Buthorn after the game was saying, credit to our guys' discipline. They didn't take the bait. Paraphrasing here, of course, but Louisville eventually had a player sent off in the I believe it was the 71st minute on yellow cards, because that's how physical. At that point, it was 2-0 USF already, and really should have been 3-0. Brown scored a goal, but it was rolled offside by an inch. That game, I remember the celebration after that game was great. I got a picture of Harrison Divinish Mears celebrating with fans. That was just phenomenal. But to me, that was a critical moment, because that was a team that needed to find itself. That was a team that lost the first couple of games. Not that they were winless going into that game, but they needed a big win, and they needed to defend their home stadium, and they did just that, and they did it in dominating fashion. 2 early goals put that game out of reach and sent a statement on the national stage that they were for real.
Well, and I think the men's soccer team was probably the only team on campus that exceeded expectations. Who would have thought this team was going to make the NCAA tournament, especially last year? You lose your best defender in Corey Cupid, who transferred out, and then you lose Tomas Skublak to graduation, who was scoring most of your goals. Who thought that freshmen like Victor Claudel and Javane Brown were going to step up in the way they did? I was not expecting that team to be in contention for the NCAA tournament. I thought they'd be okay. It'd be a better season, but they blew me away. That's a good moment. I would probably tip my scales towards the UConn win at home in the first round of the AAC tournament, just because that was the first game of any real value, I think, from a men's soccer perspective in several seasons. And obviously they go on to play SMU in the semifinal, which you could argue that one had a lot more weight, but didn't exactly end the way USF wanted it to. So I think that win against UConn at home, where they had to really bear down and defend for the last 20 minutes, and they dug out that win, that would be my signature moment.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal Brian's answer, but there weren't too many to pick from there. But I mean, going back to before the season started, I know we mentioned that Tomas Skublak was out, top goal scorer for the team. He was the guy that was producing most on the attacking end. And then going into that season, you really didn't have that sort of set in stone yet. I mean, we assumed Thomas Rotherham, because he would be, the senior to kind of lead the line, is what the assumption was. But then Victor Claudel, basically he made himself known throughout the season. And so I think that was really important. But definitely that Louisville game, I remember being there, and just the energy after that win was incredible. It's like, you see that team and it's like they did something incredible at the end of that game. And there was just pure joy from that team after they had won. And they were just hyped, so hyped. I have a video of it on my phone, and occasionally I'll scroll through Instagram or whatever, and it'll be there and I'll see it. And just that game was just poetic, I think. And it was a really good game. And like Brian said, it kind of just said, hey, we can be up there with the top guys too.
And I think, to go back to Kevin, your moment in the conference tournament, it matters, but I don't think you get to that point and get to that confidence level to be able to, you have to be able to draw back, pull back memories from previous games and how, you handled things to be able to tough out the last 20 minutes of a game like that. So I think it goes both ways. I think you can have a signature moment in the conference tournament, but you had to get there somehow, right?
Well, I can't remember why, but I wasn't at that game. I might have had a hockey game I was calling for my freelance gig, but I wasn't there, so it doesn't really stick out as much in my memory as the other ones do. But also, we gotta diversify. We can't all pick the same thing.
No, that's fair.
I think actually, well, before you get to that, I think maybe a close second, or maybe an amendment to mine, would be, it was the first game of the season against Maryland. I mean, number 1 Maryland. They ended up losing that game 1-0, but Maryland didn't score until the 69th minute. So they held the reigning national champs 69 minutes without a goal. I think that's pretty incredible. And I remember talking after that game to Coach Buhorn, and he was like, our guys they showed resilience in that game, and to stand up to the national champs, it's pretty impressive. And then a couple weeks later, you go and play Louisville and you beat them. So that's that whole string of games was pretty great.
To shift to the women's side, I think my moment would be not just one moment in time, but that postseason performance by Evelyn Vienne, where she scored the team's first, was 7 goals if you count the conference tournament, 4 in the conference tournament. We know what you think. We know what you think. But officially 7 goals, 4 in the conference tournament, and the first 3 against Florida. Then she scored 2 against Washington. She scored 9 of USF's math goals in that postseason run, elevating the team to the Sweet 16 for the first time in program history. Obviously, that was something that was on the mind of the team heading into the season, that they wanted to take that next step, and they wanted to advance past the round of 32. And Vienne just put the team on her back, and we talked to her last week, and she wouldn't use the words revenge tour, although she did kind of dump it in there later on in the interview. So maybe there's something there to it. But, she really, obviously we knew what to expect with her, but she really stepped up, played her best soccer when it counted the most. And that's what big time play is. What she said actually to us, you want to rise up in those big time moments. And Evelyn Vienne certainly did in that stretch of games in the postseason in 2019.
I'm going to make it my life's work to get that goal changed and give her credit, because
no, you're right.
You're
preaching to the choir.
Yeah, no, there's no other answer. Evelyn Vienne, who for my money is the greatest athlete in the school's history in any sport. She broke the scoring record, which was held by a former captain of the Norwegian national team, who Norway back in the day were a soccer powerhouse on the women's side. So that's nothing to slouch at. She broke that record as a junior, halfway through her junior year. She still had a season and a half left of her collegiate career, and she broke that record. I mean, it's got to be her. But for the sake of devil's advocate or shoehorning as many moments into this conversation as possible. I'd actually take it back to the first night of the season against Auburn, when they squandered a lead and it looked like it was headed for overtime, and it was just one of those nights at Corvette that USF wasn't going to be able to close out the game. And then who steps up? I'm trying to ignore this.
I gotta
Who
plug my
steps up
computer.
but the sophomore Sydney Nasello, who was showing flashes of brilliance in her freshman year, but hadn't really made that next step. She steps up, 18 seconds left until overtime, and she blasts a shot with her left foot from about 30 yards out, hits the crossbar, goes down and in, a game-winning goal on opening night. I mean, that was a touching moment. I think that was the moment where we all looked around and thought, man, this is going to be special season.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I'm not going to steal that one, but that was a special moment. I do want to talk about, I'm going to go back to a little bit of losing, I guess, that last game of the season against Florida State. But for the first half only. I feel like for the first half only. I remember I was in the booth with Kevin, with you, and with Will Polsted. And just watching the team, USF ended up scoring in the first half. They opened the scoring. It was Aubrey McGrath, a quick just dagger, kind of a poacher goal almost, but it was a significant goal because it was like, wow, we're keeping pace with they're keeping pace with Florida State, and given the impressive run that they had throughout that season, given the powerhouses that Florida State had on that team with Dana Castellanos, who now plays for Atletico Madrid. It was incredible just watching that first half specifically. It kind of fell apart a little bit in the second half, but watching USF sort of just kind of hammer that goal, that FSU goal, was very impressive to see. And I mean, even though that they lost that game and that ended up being the end of the season for them, but I think that first half was noteworthy.
Well, and to your point, that was the second straight year that USF went up to Tallahassee in the NCAA tournament. Aubrey McGrath opened the scoring, and I was there for both of those games. And for me, they were night and day, those two goals, because 2 years ago when McGrath opened the scoring, like, I was there as a fan, so I was going crazy. But you also felt lucky to be ahead at that point. In the game this year, they were not lucky to be ahead. They were right there with them. Night and day, those two teams. And it really makes me sad that they're going to graduate so many players and probably take a step back next season, because, I mean, if they had one more run with that group, they really might have been able to put it all together.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I was thinking when Nolan's talking about that FSU game. I was like, yeah, it was incredible to watch, but, once FSU made it 2-1, it was like you knew it was over, and you knew not just this season was over, but this run, at least this current stretch of success, is going to be over. Maybe they take a step back, maybe not, but you can't replace Vienne, you can't replace Hawksdaughter, you can't replace McGrath, you can't replace that trio that was just so dominant, the past couple of years. And again, maybe next year will be a rebuilding year, and then the year after, we don't know. We don't even know if there'll be a season this year. So a lot of questions that remain to be answered. But yeah, I mean, I see Nolan's argument with that McGrath goal, or just keeping pace with FSU, but then just how it ended, and it was just very unfortunate to see, because what it implicated was that this is over. It's hard moving on sometimes. Shifting gears now to basketball. Let's start with the women's side. Team came in with a lot of expectations this year. Don't wince. But the team did come in with a lot of expectations this year, much like they did last season as well, until all the injuries piled up. And again, the injuries piled up. So it's hard to take something from later on in the season and be like, well, here's something electric that happened. But there's two things early on in the season to me that stood out, that if the team had stayed healthy, they could have made a run in the NCAA tournament this year, and if it had happened. And potentially maybe finally made that step to the second weekend like they've been trying to do for so many years now, and they could never even do even with the best team they had before, and that was the team, I believe it was a 14-15 team was the best team they had when they went out to, when they hosted the NCAA tournament. The next year was when they went to UCLA. But getting back to this year, when they were able to keep pace with Baylor for as long as they did in that away game, that was something special. And obviously, we knew going into that game, they probably weren't going to win. But to be able to keep it, the exact final score escapes me at the moment. I'd have to look it up. But it was the most respectable scoreline that Baylor had played to date. And again, that was the most respectable team Baylor had played to date. But still, the implications is you're going into the house of the national champs, number 2 team overall. You better be prepared. And they were prepared. And I believe it was the next day that Elena Chinecki was finally declared eligible by the NCAA, which was very, very coincidental. But sip some tea. That's none of my business. But the number one moment that really stood out to me that I was able to witness in person was that game against Texas, where they just dominated them, and Texas looked lost. And to me, that was the first indication, because the Texas game happened before the Baylor game. That was the first indication that this team could be for real. This team could compete for something. This team was back, and then just unfortunate that injury piled up one after another, and it was just eerily similar to last season. Maybe not to the extent that it got to, but oh boy, it got close. But those Texas and Baylor games, to me, are what I'll remember from the women's basketball season this year.
See, I kind of disagree with you, because I think this year the injuries were worse. Maybe not so much in who you lost, but I mean, they lost Laksa and Ferreira very early on, and they had to kind of adjust, but it was in November. I mean, with this team, you guys will attest, every time I talked about this team, I said, well, this is the deepest I've ever seen them. They may not be as top heavy in the past, but they are deep at every position, at least 2 players deep, sometimes 3. And then the injuries start to pile up. You're pretty much not playing with a healthy lineup after mid-November, mid-December. And then you lose Maria Alvarez for the rest of the season towards the beginning of conference play. And then you lose Kristina Brabantsova for several weeks. I mean, that UConn game at home, where once again they're leading at halftime, does that go differently if you've got Alvarez coming off the bench? I think it does, because they kind of fell apart towards the end. But if they keep that 3-point shooting percentage up, which they were shooting very well beyond the arc that day, I think that it's a different story. So I would argue that the injuries were worse off this year. But obviously not the point of the conversation. I'm going to throw a curveball at you for this year, because there wasn't a ton to love on the court. I'm going to go with the 3rd home game of the season against VCU. And if you don't remember that game, it was 11 a.m. tip-off on Friday, and they did an elementary school day and had about 900 elementary school students in the building. And with all due respect to the men's game against UCF, I don't think I've heard that building louder. I worked there and I did concerts, and I don't think I've heard that building louder with all those elementary school students screaming. I did the broadcast with Jim Lauk for USF Athletics that day on Bulls Vision, and I compared it to, it sounds like a roller coaster, because when the team scores or they get a steal and the kids can recognize it's a good thing, it's just a swell of screaming, like a roller coaster riding by you, but it's slow, so it's louder and it lasts longer. That was a really cool moment, and I hope it's something they continue to do in the future, because I mean, it's such a cool concept and it worked out so well.
I think you underestimate the vocal cords of kids, man. They can just scream like there's nobody's business. But
Incredible.
I want to talk about a game, and I think you guys might know what I'm talking about. That game against Temple, 99-51. I have the finishing lineup here. Elena Sinecki with 25 points, and Sydney Harvey also with 25 points. And then also you had Betty Manunga putting up 13 points of her own. I wasn't at that game. I was covering softball, but I was kept refreshing
For you.
what's that?
Oopsie poopsie for you.
I know, basically. But I kept refreshing the page, and I remember I was not getting the stat broadcast to work. And I was like, I don't know why it's not working. And so I finally got in, and I saw the score, and it was like 80 something to 40 something. And I was like, that doesn't look right. I actually kept refreshing my page because I thought that score was wrong. And then Brian, I finally texted you, and I was like, is this the actual score? But man, I wish I had been at that game. I mean,
That game got out of control so fast too.
no discredit to softball, but I wish I was at that game just to see what was happening. I mean, like, there comes a point in a game when you're up by a certain amount and then you just keep piling it on, and the other team is just kind of falling apart in front of you. I mean, like we saw it at the World Cup with USA and Thailand. I mean, you just kept piling those goals on, and it just keeps piling that momentum. And I think, I mean, obviously I wasn't there at either of the games, but I think that's the same kind of situation that happened here. It just kept piling on. And there comes a breaking point where it's just like, well, you know what, they're running off with it. And I think also because you had such a young team too, putting up those points and putting up that kind of performance in a conference game, like that was pretty incredible to see too. And you're looking at that game and you're like, well, how far could this team really go?
Well, and two things to magnify the significance of this. One, that scoreline severely flatters Temple because it was 58-16 at halftime. I'll just say that again. 58-16 at halftime. You don't see scores like that in the women's game. You just don't. And then the second thing is that this is a Temple team that they had lost to like 2 weeks prior. They went on the road and lost Temple, and then they came back, decided that they had had enough with the pompous Owls. I don't know what vendetta they had against them, but to smack them around the way they did, that was a statement for me. Obviously, they weren't able to really build on it because they had a stumble when they faced UConn a couple of weeks later, but that felt really special to me. Like throughout the game, calling that game, we were witnessing something very special.
So to shift to men's basketball here, I think
We
there's
have to.
one or two moments that are very easy to. It's one or the other, I think, for you guys, right?
Two.
It's either going to be the win against UCF or it's going to be LaQuincy Rito's buzzer beater against SMU. I wasn't at either, so they're all the same to me. They all just blend in as memories I had to read about or watch on YouTube later. So I really think the UCF one though, because yeah, it's a dramatic way. The Rito shot, very dramatic way to end the game. But I think beating your rival for the first time in, 5 years, and to do it in pretty dominating fashion, that to me, for a program, obviously for Rito, that's a very special moment, his shot. But for a program, and a program trying to get on the right track, that was a milestone in Brian Gregory's eyes. And that was very important to do. And that came, I believe it was after the Memphis win as well. So that was back-to-back quality wins. And obviously, Memphis was a quad one win, and then you had beating your rival. So it was back-to-back moments where you checked off those boxes for Brian Gregory. But I think that UCF win, just because it was the first win in the war on I-4 in 5 years, that for me, it has to be that.
Well, and I'll recycle the same point I used for the women's basketball, and that this was a UCF team that they had gone up to Oviedo and played and lost in heartbreaking fashion down the stretch. A couple of questionable calls in the eyes of Brian Gregory gave UCF the 1 point advantage in that game. And then to come back to your house, a place where, let's give credit, UCF fans travel to. Like there were quite a few UCF fans in the building that night, but there was also a really big crowd. It kind of felt the same way the atmosphere did, maybe even a bigger atmosphere than the CBI final, game one of the final a couple seasons ago. So it was a big moment, and this team stepped up because they didn't just beat UCF, they spanked them. And the Knights were able to make the scoreline respectable late on with a nice little run in the last couple of minutes. But USF emphatically won that game, and that building was raucous as they started to pull away. I believe there was a Michael Durr dunk in the mix there down the stretch that really sent that crowd into a frenzy. But I'm sorry, Brian, you cannot go against the LaQuincy Rito buzzer beater, because let's strip it away of some of the amazing things. One, it's a senior night for LaQuincy Rito, a night where Antu Marichevich has really shined, but Rito has struggled, not playing very well. Two, and we didn't find out till a couple weeks later, but it's going to be the last game of his career because they're not going to play the AAC tournament in Fort Worth. Take all that away. They still were down by 7 points with 24 seconds to go. They forced 2 5-second turnovers on the inbound on SMU's side, one of which hit the scoreboard, which I legitimately have never seen happen. I don't watch a whole lot of professional basketball, but I have never seen an inbound hit the scoreboard, and it did. So to get a couple of huge shots, and then Rito picks the ball up with 4 seconds to go and drains and off balance. A lot of people forget this. He is off balance as he puts that shot up, and to go in at the buzzer, you can't beat that.
I just want to point out I had the Memphis and UCF games mixed up. The at Memphis quad one win came after UCF, but Nolan, go ahead with your point.
Well, again, I'm gonna piggyback off of Kevin. I mean, because there are only 2 options and there are 3 of us. But that shot.
If you have another option, you're free to pick it. I'm just saying I don't think there's a third option.
Yeah, exactly. There are 2 plausible options. But that shot, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in front of my own eyes in person ever in any sport, like just a moment like that. And I just the way that, and Kevin, we talked about this when we talked on your show earlier. What was it, a month ago or so? Just counting? That, yeah. Who knows the days anymore? But just the moment where that ball was hanging in balance and it was at the peak of its arc, I was like, that ball's going in. Because when he released it, I was like, there's no way he's making it. Like, it's going to bounce out. It's going to be typical, USF men's basketball fashion. They're going to lose off of a missed shot, and it's going to be it. But when that ball went in, I was like, holy crap, they did it. And that sort of it was like a moment of legendary proportion. And I have never seen anything like that. And just for me, that was just a surreal day. And like the fact that it was senior day too, just kind of piled onto it as well. And like you said, Rito wasn't playing too well that game. And, it just had to be him at the end. It just had to be him. And so that's my pick.
Yeah, that UCF win, that's a building point. That's a turning point for a program. But the end of the SMU game, people are going to talk about that for decades until this team gives them something else to talk about, because it's got to be the best thing to happen to this program in 10 years, or at least in terms of the moment. And it's also going to create more fans, because anyone who was at that game and that was their first USF men's basketball game, they're a fan for life now.
Yeah.
I mean, you experience that, you're going to be hooked forever.
All right, and to wrap it up, we're going to go with spring sports because, I mean, let's be honest, there's not a whole large sample to pick from baseball and softball, respectively.
We can skip the baseball team. Let's be honest.
Just due to the nature of how short the seasons were. I mean, if you had a full season of both, there probably would be enough to talk about both. But I'm going to go with early on in the softball season. Team lost their first, what was it here? They lost their first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight games. They were 0-6. Probably could have had some hard luck if they didn't have that Georgia State game canceled due to everything in the tournament running late before it. They may have at least been 1-6 entering the Texas Tech game on the second Saturday of the season. Ultimately, they were 0-6. They beat Texas Tech 3-0. Okay, number 17 Texas Tech. Then the next day, 9 a.m. the next day, they come out and play Georgia, number 15 Georgia. Georgina Corrick goes out, pitches a shutout, and hits the game-winning home run. To me, that's the standout moment of what was ultimately an abbreviated season, just because, man, the Texas Tech win was big, but they needed another win coming out of that weekend to have any sort of real sort of life, because they weren't going to beat UCLA. We knew that, and that wound up as a 15-2 6-inning run rule game. So ultimately, we were proved right. They weren't going to beat UCLA. So they needed that Georgia game, and they needed a big performance from Corrick in the circle. But then they also needed some offense, and she gave them both that. And to me, I think that just shows just how critical she is to that team. And to me, that was a moment that kind of sparked them. And, then they win all 4 games the next weekend. They win 4 out of 5 games the following weekend. They beat up on Detroit Mercy in a midweek matchup. They win 4 out of 5 games the following weekend after that, then Penn State, and then the season was canceled. They were on a roll, and that Texas Tech game, but especially that Georgia game, I think, gave them all the momentum to get on that roll.
They were on a roll, and they were about to start conference play. And, I mean, they've been very good in the conference over the last couple of years. If they're hot, they're going to steamroll anybody put in front of them. I think this spring, as abbreviated as it was, it showed us how good Georgina Corrick is, because we had, 20 games of the season? The significant moments for Georgina Corrick in those 20 games. She pitched a shutout and hit the game-winning home run. Not once, but twice. She did it again at home. I forget who the opponent was, but she did it twice.
Stakes are obviously a little bit higher against Georgia.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But the fact that she does it at all, it's incredible.
Let me look up and see if I can find her.
She gets her 500th strikeout, and with an extra year of eligibility, if she stays the next 2 seasons, she's got a chance now to break the strikeout record if she keeps up the pace. That happened. And then she should have had her own solo no-hitter. Instead, she combined with Vivian Pond to pitch a no-hitter. So that's in not even half the season. She has that many bullet points of significance. I guess neither of those were really one moment, but that's what I'm going with.
Well, I think we all know how good Georgina Corrick is. I mean, we've been seeing her pitch for a couple of years.
If you don't know who she is, Nolan.
What?
Not if you don't know who she is, Nolan.
So it was against Iowa State, by the way, in the last weekend.
Iowa State.
Yeah.
Just move on. It wasn't a good joke.
Okay. Anyway, let me recollect myself after Kevin's shenanigans over here. But yes, we all know how good Georgina Corrick is as a pitcher. But I want to talk about the rest of the pitching staff too. And they didn't really have that big of an impact as Georgina Corrick did, and they didn't have a visible impact really. But one of the things that was going to be a challenge this season heading into it was, how are you going to support Georgina Corrick? You can't have her come and pitch every single game, every single inning. And they put together a pitching staff of freshmen and a sophomore transfer. And they struggled. I mean, Cameron Dolby, coming from Boston College, she had the most experience out of any of them. A little bit of an iffy ERA, but she was good with strikeouts. She could pitch strikeouts. She didn't do too well in certain games, but then she made up for it in what she could. Vivian Pond, kind of one of those quiet players who would come in toward the end of a game, play really well. And then you also had Brittany Hook, someone who, well, first of all, the human element of it first. Her mother passed away before they started the season, and her first game was against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Not even a full game. It was the last batter. It was 3 straight strikes, and that's what won the game. And so that moment for me was probably the best moment of the season, and combined with the fact that, you had other pitchers in contention and whatnot, but just seeing that moment was so incredible. And it was such a human element to everything. And just talking after that game was just, and hearing how she kind of got through that time and just how softball kind of grounded her, it was just such an incredible story. I mean, it was great. There's nothing better than that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a pitcher who, let's be honest, she struggled in 2019. She only really saw action, I believe it was in 7 games, and 6 of the games USF lost. And really, you could describe her appearances in terms of mop-up roles, and she didn't really even do that relatively well. But, you know, obviously she took some time because her mother's death was days before the season started. So she was not around early on. And then ultimately, it was that, I believe it was it, second to last weekend? It was the second to last weekend because it was days before I went to Arizona. And then the last weekend was when I got back. So it's the second to last weekend. She comes in on that second game on Friday night. And like you mentioned, it was a 1-out save. And I think it was more ceremonial on the part of Coach Jessica Moore to get her some action, see what happens before she throws her out in. Also, it was a save situation, but it wasn't like a high stakes scenario. I would say that I think reasonably, you know, I felt like Moore thought she could handle it, but I don't think, you know, even in the wildest dreams, you could predict something like that where, you know, Hook throws strike one and it's, you know, it was like you couldn't script something like this because the crowd got, you know, more and more, you know, behind her. Like they were already behind her because I think everybody who was watching that game at that point knew the situation. You know, they knew the situation that Brittany Hook was in. You know, and then she throws a second strike, and then it's just incredible. And then you know, strike 3, and she gets mobbed. And you can't write something better than that. The only way you could write something better than that is if her mom died midway through the season, and that final strike, that happened in Oklahoma City. But other than that, I don't think you could script that moment better. And she ultimately wound up, I believe it was her who pitched in that game against Detroit Mercy that we mentioned in the midweek earlier. And then she had a couple other good outings, and you know, she really was turning the corner. And, you know, that one strikeout, you know, we were joking about headlines we used on stories, and we were saying we might have gone to the well with more than just a blank a little bit too often. And we used it twice, I think, both in this context of softball, actually. But the second time was in relation to that strikeout. I think the headline was more than just a single strikeout. And that was before anything else happened, you know, with Brittany Hook and you know, that game against Detroit Mercy and all that. That was just based on that one strikeout, that this represented more than just a 3-pitch strikeout. But yeah.
Probably your best story.
Well, thank you.
Just to plug it. It's really good.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and really when the season got canceled, I felt bad, really most for her. You know, obviously not knowing the fate of the seniors like Anna Marie Bruni and all, you know, you feel bad for them not knowing what their future. We don't know if they'll be back regardless. You know, there still has to be a desire to come back. There still has to be funding one way or the other, whether it's scholarship or they want to pay out of pocket. We don't know if they'll be back. But, you know, Brittany Hook only a sophomore. We assume she'll be back, but you know, this could have been a special year for her. And see that stripped away from her is really a shame.
Yeah, and even just talking with her, I mean, especially over that weekend, I think she said something along the lines of with each pitch, I mean, she could just feel her mom there basically. And
on that Friday alone, and there were only 3 pitches to take that sample size from, you could see it more and more.
Exactly. And seeing that, it's just kind of like softball kept her going, and having that taken away, it's just like, wow, you know, it's
awful.
Yike. Yeah.
I hate that this is the bummer way to end the recap of the year, but I think it's absolutely worth mentioning that, you know, you think of the seniors, but there are also other storylines that got stripped away, and you know, it's unfortunate. But I want to end on a bit of a forward-thinking note. Going forward, you know, let's assume that everything will be as normal this year. I'm with you, but who do you think will be the best team on campus this upcoming year? And I'm going to go with softball.
That's probably the right answer. And this is a hard question because I think arguably the last couple of years it's been no question women's soccer, and they're gonna have a step down. There's no, like, they're gonna have to change their complete identity in order to have the same kind of success, and that's not really Coach Schulte Brown's MO. So they're going to take a step down. I think men's soccer, we don't quite know what the roster is going to look like. I've heard whispers that Javane Brown might be leaving the team, so you got to be careful there. I don't like to gamble on this team because they've been screwed literally 3 years in a row. But I'm going to say women's basketball. I think this is finally the year. You're only losing Tamara Henshaw. She's important, but she's not irreplaceable. You're going to have the last year of Betty Manunga. You're going to have Maria Alvarez, hopefully healthy, and a whole year of experience under her belt. Same to Brabantsova. Elisa Pinzon, I think, really came into her own in the second half of the season where she really stepped up as the leader of this team. And we know Coach Fernandez, there's going to be 2 or 3 Europeans that'll come in and automatically be contributors on day one. So I would put my money on that team being the best team.
See, I'm gonna.
Also, UConn's out of the conference, so the path is a lot clearer.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
You bring up a very fair point, Kevin, and I want to go with women's basketball because of everything that you just said, really. But I'm actually going to say, I don't know if maybe the best team, but I think potential to be one of the most exciting teams. I'm going to go with women's soccer because if you look at the players that Denise Schulte Brown have brought in, they have potential to be very exciting. I look specifically at Sarita Thurden because she does have Canadian experience, international experience. And Kevin, this is no joke. I'm not even kidding here. She is a very exciting player, I think. And I think to say that she will fill in the role of Evelyn Vienne is a very tall ask. And I think it's almost an impossible ask if you want to have someone fill in that role completely. But I think she could be very exciting, combined with a lot of the other players that they got. I was just doing a little bit of some research a while back when they announced 5 more signings that they made. I think it was just about a week ago. A lot of the players that Denise Schulte Brown signed have international experience. And so that's really interesting to see. That means that they typically would have more of a refinement of their game, where typically with the rest of the team, separate from those 3 players who we mentioned, Evelyn Vienne, Andrea Hochstadter, Aubrey McGrath, some players were struggling a little bit. I mean, they struggled to find some sort of cohesiveness. That could be exciting now that they have international players coming in. So maybe not the best team, but maybe the most exciting, I think.
I think they also have the potential to exceed expectations the most, because obviously you're going to look at it from just the pure perspective. You're losing one of the best athletes in university history in Evelyn Vienne. So yeah, really, what are your expectations going into the season? I think you're going to be like, well, you're going to take a step down. So if you can not take as big of a step down, I think you call it a success.
Well, and you've just raised a couple of interesting points that I've been thinking about. For starters, you actually are going to have most of the back line back. So you'll still have that core to build around, especially Lucy Roberts, who should be a year better by then. You've got some holes in the midfield, but I think a really intriguing storyline to watch will be how does Sydney Nasello adapt her game now that there's a gaping hole to fill in. Sometimes you see players like her, when the path is cleared ahead of her and she is now the player to be relied upon, they step up. And if she steps up and she kind of takes that mantle and starts scoring more goals, I could see your point. They could be very exciting to watch. So that would be something to watch out for. But I'm sticking to my guns with women's basketball.
Okay, well that'll put a bow on things for us. Literally for myself and for Kevin. That's our final action
That's it.
here. That's kind of sad. It also means we won't be around to see these things through. I mean, be around. I don't think I'm not planning on like not being around. I hope I'm around. But I think we learned a lesson that you never know.
End of the line.
Yeah, at the end of the line, once you leave USF, you're never allowed back on campus. That's the sad reality. When they say you stay forever, it's either you stay forever or you're not allowed back. No, but in all actuality, we won't be actively covering the team for, I guess, student organizations. There's no way to know. Somebody could see our fine work and pick us up immediately to cover USF, and then it's like we never left. But
Derek.
whatever it is,
Derek.
what?
Nothing.
Say it again.
I said, hey, Derek.
Yeah, that's actually probably not a bad route to go, but that's why you make friends, right? But I want to take this opportunity to congratulate someone on this video call for moving on up, because you're talking about that clear line of succession. Of course, we're talking about. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
What are we talking about?
I don't know who we're talking about. It's my
Kevin?
favorite time. We need to bring somebody else into this call. There's somebody in the waiting room. No, I'm talking about, of course, Nolan Brown will be taking over as sports editor for 2020, 2021. I flubbed the line, so that's.
You said plenty of 20s in that one.
There were plenty of 20s. Just think of it as Andrew Jackson.
Dang. Nolan, what was the bet that you lost?
What was the bet that I lost? There was no bet, Kevin. I'm willingly doing this.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Kevin.
You wouldn't believe how hard it was to convince him to take the job.
I do believe it. I was there for a lot of it.
It took me
Listen.
like a whole year. More, probably.
But anyway, the important thing is the path is clear, and there's nobody else I would trust more to at least do things. And will they do them the right way? We'll find out. Kidding.
Even
Wow.
more than yourself.
We're in good hands with Nolan.
You trust him even more than yourself?
See, I'm a narcissist though, so I don't trust anyone more than myself. So that's honestly, like, you're asking me the question. I want to give you the accurate answer. I only trust myself. It's like that. Do you ever see that one meme where the guy is in the mirror? It's like,
Mental note of that.
don't trust anyone, not even yourself, and it's the guy holding a gun to his back.
Yes, I love that meme.
It's good.
Okay, well, I have a lot of editing to do to edit all this crap out. But congratulations to Nolan. Nolan will be taking over. God knows when, because who knows when sports will be back. But
Maybe
One of
never.
these days.
Maybe
One of the-
Yeah, maybe I'll just
your
the
year
I'll
of
just be-
revolution comes.
your year of sports editor might be literally covering no sports.
wow. What a surreal time that would be.
Now, I was actually a little bit bitter that my year got cut off in like March, but then, I mean, the reality is you might not get anything out of this year. So best of luck. Best of luck filling content. I can only tell you that you're only allowed to do so many columns per week. You can only go to the opinion well said. And the most important thing, there are only so many opinions you can have when there's nothing going on.
That's true. I think earlier, maybe, what was it, a week ago or a week and a half ago, you asked if I had a column to write, if I had anything in mind, and I'm like, well, what's there to have an opinion on? There's nothing to talk about.
You can only write that this sucks for so many weeks. Like, there's so many ways to write that. But well, I'm sure you'll figure something out. But this has been fun. Wrapped everything up full circle. I got to interview Kitija Laksa on the way out, and then Kevin wanted to be sentimental and say that I'm the one who brought him into USF Athletics coverage in the first place.
Why wouldn't you let me say it?
Oh, well, I don't know. Because I'm the only one who trusts anyone to do anything around here.
Well, now you killed the buzz.
I'm Buzz Killington. I think this is a good place to end our recording. But before we go, before we go, there is
I'm
something
scared.
very important.
I'm very scared.
I'm actually terrified.
You should be terrified.
Not knowing what it was.
Oh.
And they'll continue singing it forever just because this is a song that doesn't end.
Kevin wasn't here for the
Yes, it
interlude,
goes on and on.
but I think Nolan gets the reference, and that's all that matters.
Started singing it, not knowing
Thank you so much for joining us these past 6 weeks here. That's Kevin. At the bottom is Nolan. I've been Brian Hatab. Thanks for joining us really year-round here in the Oracle. And like I said, I may be moving on, Kevin may be moving on, but this is the song that never ends. We'll just keep going on and on, my friends. Or it doesn't
She's
end.
got so many subscribers.
What's
Catchy song.
It's a long video. It's a very long video.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Does she loop it or is she doing it the whole
You
time?
can see that for like an hour.
That's much too long.
Some people start